What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys. I'm going to try and bring you guys an episode each day this week leading up to the NFL draft. I'm going to try and mix in a few more episodes every week. We've only been doing one a week here for a little bit, but sometimes I have my thoughts that I would like to get off my chest a little bit, and I would like to discuss those things with you guys. So let me know if you guys would like to see more solo pods. It's not going to be anything crazy. It's probably just going to be something like 10 to 15 minutes. This one probably only going to be around that as well. Today, I want to talk about Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation before the NFL draft. We are 3 days out as I am recording this, and we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot about Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins' name has popped up. You've heard Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck, Will Howard, a bunch of different names thrown around. So let me try and kind of clear up some things for you guys here today. So let's start where everything is. Aaron Rodgers, of course, has not yet signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went on the Pat McAfee show last week. Didn't really sound like a guy that was going to come into a decision anytime soon. And here's what I'll say. I've heard kind of more and more as time has gone on. I have heard that there is this growing sentiment inside the organization that while they're kind of and have been confident he's going to sign, there's also a feeling from some people inside that organization that it's become somewhat apparent he doesn't want to sign in Pittsburgh. They are kind of a last resort option. Now, the Steelers are primed and willing to wait out Aaron Rodgers. If you heard Mike Tomlin speak at the NFL owners meetings, he had said that there was no deadline set. And more importantly, it sounded like the line of demarcation actually is training camp. So it seems like they're going to wait. I don't want to talk too much about Aaron Rodgers because I think we've kind of killed that cat, to be quite honest with you. We'll get back to that probably later on if he still hasn't signed, a month or two from now. But that is certainly going to be something I think to watch over the next few weeks, et cetera, et cetera. But right now, it doesn't sound like that is imminent. It seems like if he does play somewhere, it will be Pittsburgh, but they are kind of a last resort type option, to be quite honest with you guys right now. So let's talk about the draft, the NFL draft. Where the Steelers go here, because they've shown interest in this quarterback class. I mean, guys, if you want to deny that they've shown interest in this quarterback class, you can't. They have brought in guys like Tyler Shuck, Jaxson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, and Kyle McCord for pre-draft visits. They went to the pro days of Quinn Ewers, Riley Leonard, Will Howard, Jalen Milroe, Cam Miller. They have seen essentially every single quarterback in this class that has any level of gravitas to them, sans really Dylan Gabriel. So they have looked at every quarterback not named Dylan Gabriel or Cam Ward. Cam Ward's obviously going to be the first overall pick in the first round. So the Steelers have shown a lot of interest, and people were kind of wondering, well, how serious is their interest? I think it is quite serious. I think they are clearly going to draft one. I would be stunned, honestly, if they didn't draft a quarterback in this class. I think they will walk away with one at some point, whether it is in the first round with Shedeur Sanders, the middle rounds, Will Howard, or even the later rounds with Riley Leonard or Cam Miller. I think they will draft a quarterback in this class. And I really think the first round discussion comes down to Shedeur Sanders. I don't think that Jaxson Dart is firmly at the top of their board. I think that Shedeur Sanders is ranked over Jaxson Dart on their board. I think that they would, I don't think they expected Shedeur Sanders to ever fall to them, but they have kind of heard the whispers. It's become a growing thing that Shedeur Sanders could drop to them. And I think that is something that they've looked at. And, I think Shedeur as a prospect has some really good positives. I think he's great above the neck. I think above the neck, he's a really nice prospect. I think he reads defense as well. I think he can hit throws with open anticipation. I think he's got obviously great accuracy. But there's issues too. I don't think the arm's elite. I think the pocket presence at times can get into him in trouble. He drifts. He kind of goes a little too deep in the pocket, can do the spin out of the pocket. Some of that was obviously developing tendencies because he was with that terrible offensive line, but it's going to have to get fixed in the NFL systems. And he just needs to get more torque on his lower body and through his abs to get more power on the ball. I think his arm's nothing special, but I do think the fact that he doesn't get great torque also causes some balls to flutter at times. And I think that's something that he needs to work on. But I do think this is a good prospect. I currently have a second round grade on him, but a second round grade in this class, he's like a top 20, he's a fringe top 20 player in this class with that type of grade because there are just not many true first round talents in this class, and so Shedeur is going to be there, kind of in that 25-ish range. To be quite honest with you, on my board. So I think on a lot of teams' board, the concerns that I talked about are probably the exact reason why he is probably slated to potentially drop to 21. I don't think the Giants are going to take him at 3. I don't think the Browns are going to take him at 2. It's sounding like, and from what I've heard, the Saints are not going to take him at 9. So the biggest threat to the Steelers before 21, I think, would be the Giants trading back up into the first round, not taking him to 3, but trading up from 34 to 20. Both the Buccaneers and the Broncos have really expressed interest in trading back, and so have the Steelers for that matter. But if Shedeur Sanders is there, I think the Steelers are going to take Shedeur Sanders. If he's not there, I think they're going to go defensive line. That's kind of my feel on this. I think Dart, Shuck, Milrow are trade back candidates. I think out of those three, I think they like Dart the best. And I think Milrow would probably be second on their board there. But that would be a trade back type scenario where maybe they would consider quarterback there. But I do think the one scenario is thinking at 21, Son's an absolutely ravaged board where Dart, becomes their best option there, I think would be Shedeur Sanders. So I think that is real. The likely outcome, though, I do think is potentially the Giants coming up and getting Shedeur Sanders. I think they really like Shedeur. I think that they have shown interest in that, and they've talked a lot about this three-pronged strategy in New York about going after multiple veterans and taking a shot in the draft. I think Shedeur would do that for them. Obviously, Brian Dable and Joe Shane, are on the hot seat there, and so they need to get these things right. They have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. I think Shedeur Sanders makes a lot of sense for them. They've also hunted around the market for Jalen Milrow. I think Jalen Milrow ends up being a Cleveland Brown. That's kind of what I think is going to end up happening here. So I do think the Steelers are kind of in this interesting spot where if they don't get Shedeur, I think they will wait till the middle rounds. I still think Will Howard will be the most likely target in the middle rounds. I think they could also look at Kyle McCord. Those are probably the two most serious mid-round options, and then they could also wait till the late rounds. Of course, if they wanted to and didn't love their value on the quarterback situation, depending on how fast these guys come off the board. But right now, I mean, listen, I think Shedeur 21, it's not a disaster pick by any means. I'm not a Dart fan. I'm not a Milrow believer. I'm not a Shuck believer at 21. I understand Shedeur at 21. I think he's a very high floor prospect. I question the high upside of his game. I do think that there's concern there that he can't go 1-to-1 and toe to toe with the Patrick Mahomeses, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, et cetera, et cetera. And taking a quarterback in the 20s 3 years after you just did it, I also think is a little bit of a hard sell to me. But I think Shedeur Sanders in the Steelers' eyes is a little bit different. I think they have a first round grade on him. I think they love his confidence. Some teams aren't going to love the confidence, aren't going to love the brashness that Shedeur brings. The Steelers love that. They view it as a competitor's mindset. I don't personally have a ton of problems with Shedeur's confidence. I think that's good. He believes that he is the best player on the field. I like that from a quarterback. I think he can be a good leader. There's going to be a little bit of adjustment for him as a leader, obviously, I think as well, coming into the NFL level, but he's got a great mentorship there with Deion Sanders and being able to actually teach leadership and things like that. Deion was a leader in his locker rooms. So I think the Steelers are going to have the ability to have a great intangible quarterback there. I think the above the neck stuff is great. I think some of the physical tools are questionable in the pocket presence. I think it's a little tough to fully sell on the high upside of Shedeur Sanders. I think he could very much slot into, that kind of 18 to 15 tier in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. I call that the kind of Tua Tagovailoa tier. I think he could pop in there. I think he's got an incredible accuracy. But I do question some of the fits with the Steelers, just with in terms of the upside. And so that's kind of my issue with that. I would personally, I think that they would be better off waiting till 2026. And I get it, there's no guaranteed prospects. So the argument would be take the high floor option to Shedeur Sanders. You believe in him. I get it. But I do think that there are real questions about Shedeur as a prospect and what he would bring to you long term. Where you going to be locked into this guy for 7, 8 years? I think back to the Bengals teams with Andy Dalton. I think, that's kind of what Shedeur would kind of compare to. Not Andy Dalton specifically, but kind of that tier of quarterback. And I do think Shedeur has this really high upside in terms of the IQ part of his game. I think he can unlock some more anticipatory throws. I think with what the Steelers do offensively, he fits that well. But I also do think that there are questions about how far this train can go. And I think that's the biggest question I have is the upside there? It's not really Shedeur a good prospect. He's a good prospect. He's going to be a solid starting quarterback in the NFL. The question is he going to be a guy that can get you to a Super Bowl? You're drafting this guy because you were hoping to get a quarterback purgatory and get to Super Bowls, right? So we'll see what Shedeur kind of ends up becoming. I have questions, but I also have big time pluses in his favor. I like Shedeur as a prospect, but I do think the Steelers are just a little bit of an awkward fit because they're in the AFC. The type of prospect Shedeur is this high floor, maybe a little bit of a lower upside type option, but we will see. I do think the Steelers' quarterback noise in the NFL draft is very real. I think they're going to draft one, and I think Shedeur Sanders is a very real option at 21 overall. I also think Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon are real options there. I think defensive line's still firmly in play, but I think Shedeur Sanders has kind of come out of nowhere on the Steelers' radar. They didn't really expect him back at the combine to even have a shot of falling to 21, but now that that's appearing to be a very real chance, I do think the Steelers are looking at that and saying, maybe we got to take this guy. So we'll see where it goes, folks. I'll be back tomorrow talking with John and talking in depth longer about the NFL draft. I want you guys to let me know, do you want more of these types of podcasts, these solo ones? I'll definitely be doing more of them during training camp and things like that. But just every week, would you want one or two more shows just so we can cover some things? I can take some questions from you guys. We can talk some ball on here. So I will come out with an episode every day this week talking NFL draft. And then hopefully I can get a schedule kind of planned out if you guys really do want these shows. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell for more, folks. Be back tomorrow.